You know, I have sources that are young enough to be my grandchildren. You know, it's and I don't have any pride in calling them up and taking them out to lunch. And the only way I'm a reporter, and the only way I can write a column is if I have information to put into it. My role model as a columnist was Joe Alsop. Who whatever faults he had, he reported every day of his life, and I report every day, seeing people on the phone, and it's the only way I can function.
Columnist, pundit, author, and friend to a lot of people here at Fox News Channel, Robert Novak died today. He was known by many here in Washington as a columnist who reported his column, a real shoe leather kind of guy. We're back with the panel with some thoughts. Juan, that was an interview you did with Robert Novak back in 1998. Your thoughts on the man and his legacy?
Well, I think that he really expressed something very important there, Brett, which was that he was a real reporter. He had been a real reporter, Wall Street Journal in Chicago, and he had come up and, with Rollie Evans, developed the idea that you put out real information, and what it became was kind of a live wire for everybody who was the inside group in Washington, D.C. Political insiders would read Novak, and it's almost like you were reading tea leaves to see what was exactly in that column, what was the latest on this grapevine of the people who are most inside the political universe here in D.C. The thing that really always struck me about Bob Novak was that he persisted in the reporting. He never stopped. People would say Bob Novak is ideological. Some people on the left would say he's the Prince of Darkness. You know what? Bob Novak would take on Republicans as well as Democrats. Bob Novak was an honest reporter. And for me, an inspiration in that sense. Tough guy. I used to co-host a Crossfire with him and everything like that. And he was the kind of person who would pin you to the wall because he had good information.
Fred, you were a close friend.
I was. Known him for 36 years. We were great, you know, among other things, as you know, Juan. Bob was a great basketball fan, one of the most astute fans I've ever known. We sat next to each other at the Washington Wizards game for 35 years. It's a long time. And he was a better reporter than Joe Alsop, who he cited in that interview, because Bob thought every column ought to have, if not a big scoop, it ought to have at least some nuggets of new information that people hadn't heard before. And along with what Juan was saying, you know, Bob was a conservative, but he wasn't partisan. You know, he would pound Republicans if he thought they were slipping away from the conservative position they should have taken. I mean, and Democrats, of course, were never there. So he would pound them as well. And he basically terrified official Washington. They were afraid of him because they knew he was an honest guy who would take any of them on. If he had good information, he was going to report it.
That's what made him so influential and really unique, was his independence. He was a reporter, but what he did by writing his reportage in a column is he severed any control an editor or managing editor would have had over the content or placement of his material. Nobody edited him. He was his column, so he was out there as a reporter on his own. And there was a second kind of independence he had, which was he was a consummate insider. And he succeeded the great early 20th century columnists like Lippmann, Walter Lippmann, who are also insiders, but who were actually part of administrations. Lippmann had worked with Woodrow Wilson. He was an insider who knew everybody, but never was a member of a team. So he was always independent politically and also editorially. That's why he was important, and that's why he was respected, and that's why he'll be missed.
Fred, late in life, did he ever regret being part of the story in the Valerie Plame case when he reported that? You know, that was one of the lesser events in his career as a reporter. He was the first guy to report that she'd gotten this, you know, her husband off on this assignment from the CIA, and he put it in his column and thought he did exactly the right thing, which of course he did. So look, there were bigger feats of reporting than that he pulled off, many of them.
And I think people forget that it wasn't that somebody fed him this on an ideological basis. It was a function of his reporting that went out there and got the information, and then it turned out to be in this way. And one last thing to say is he had a wonderful wife, Geraldine, and I think all of us here on the panel want to say, you know, Geraldine, our love goes out to you. Our condolences. That's it for the panel, but stay tuned for some breaking news from the world of sport.